John Carter stood at the viewing window of the great council chamber. The space beyond was filled with stars and the massive shapes of alien ships. For 30 years, he had served as Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council. In all that time, the meetings had been about trade, cultural exchange, and peaceful exploration. But today felt different. The chamber was huge, with seats for representatives of all 27 species. The curved walls glowed with soft blue light. John straightened his formal blue uniform and touched the small earth pin on his collar for luck. "Something's wrong," said Linda Ross, his assistant. She had been with John for 12 years and could read the room better than most humans. "The Miktari delegates wouldn't look at me when I greeted them." John nodded. The Miktari were usually the friendliest toward humans. "Stay alert," he whispered. Supreme Counselor Zexthar entered the chamber. The tall, gray-skinned alien moved slowly to the center platform. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he surveyed the room. The normal friendly chatter died away. "This emergency session of the Galactic Council is now open," Zexthar announced. His voice was translated through the small device in John's ear. "We gather today to address Incident 447. John glanced at Linda. She shrugged slightly. Neither had heard of any Incident 447. "For 3,000 years, continued Zexthar, we have maintained peace with the humans of Earth. We have shared technologies, resources, and knowledge. We have watched them spread to 17 colony worlds." The Supreme Counselor paused. The skin around his neck flaps darkened, a sign of strong emotion in his species. "Yesterday, evidence of Incident 447 was confirmed by our security forces. The Council has voted on the appropriate response." John felt a cold knot form in his stomach. No vote had been called that he knew of. No humans had been present for whatever discussion had happened. By a vote of 26-1, the Council has decided to sever all diplomatic ties with Earth and its colonies. Zexthar's voice grew harder. "Furthermore, the Council formally declares a state of war against humanity, effective in 1 standard month." Gasps and murmurs filled the chamber. John pushed away from the viewing window and stepped forward. "Supreme Counselor, I must object. Earth has received no information about any incident. We have the right to know what we are accused of and to defend ourselves." Zexthar turned all 4 eyes toward John. "The evidence is not in question, Ambassador. The decision is made." "What is Incident 447? John demanded, walking closer to the center platform. 2 security guards moved to block his path. The Miktari representative, Shanla, stood up from her seat. Her voice was quiet but carried across the chamber. "The humans deserve to know." Zexthar's neck flaps pulsed with dark colors. "They know what they have done. The mining operation on Moon LV 447 found more than minerals. They uncovered what was meant to stay buried forever." John shook his head. "I know of no mining operation that." "This session is closed to human representatives," interrupted Zexthar. "You will be escorted to your ship. You have 1 month to return to Earth and prepare." "The Council has spoken." The security guards moved toward John and Linda. John saw the hands of many representatives move to their weapons. The friendly council he had known for 30 years was gone. Linda grabbed his arm. "We need to leave. Now." As they backed toward the exit, John noticed Shanla, the Miktari representative who had spoken up, make a subtle hand gesture. A warning. A message. They barely made it to their ship. 3 Council security vessels followed them to the jump point but did not fire. As they prepared for the faster-than-light jump to Earth, Linda looked at the communication panel. "All channels to Council worlds are already closed," she said. "John, what are we going to do?" John stared at the stars beyond the view screen. 3,000 years of peace ended in a 5-minute meeting. "We're going to warn Earth," he said. "And then we're going to find out what really happened on Moon LV 447. The news of the Council's declaration hit Earth like a storm. At the North American Defense Center, Admiral Susan Miller watched the recording of John Carter's emergency transmission for the third time. She paused the screen on the ambassador's worried face. "Play it again from the part about Incident 447, she said to the computer. The image shifted, and John's voice filled the room. They mentioned a mining operation on Moon LV 447, something about humans finding what was meant to stay buried. Susan turned to the group gathered around the large table. Military officers in dress uniforms mixed with government officials in suits. None of them had expected to be called for an emergency war council when they woke up this morning. "Does anyone know anything about this moon?" she asked. Richard Allen, head of weapons development, raised his hand. He was older than most in the room, with gray hair and tired eyes. LV 447 is in the TAS CD system. We had a small mining base there about 50 years ago, but it was abandoned when the minerals ran out. "Did we find anything unusual there?" Susan asked. Richard shook his head. "Not that I know of." The room's doors slid open, and a man in rumpled clothes rushed in. He carried a tablet and looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Sorry I'm late," he said. "The transport from Mars was delayed." Susan nodded to him. "Everyone, this is Jack Nelson. He's our top archaeologist." Jack put his tablet on the table, and a 3D map appeared in the air above it. "I've been studying this moon for years. The mining operation didn't just find minerals. They found ruins." The room went quiet. Jack zoomed in on a section of the map. The ruins were at least 10,000 years old. The mining team reported it, and a research team was sent to study them. But then the project was suddenly shut down. All records were sealed. Jack looked around the room. Someone didn't want us to know what was there. Susan frowned. Why would the council wait 50 years to declare war over this? "Maybe they just found out," said Richard. Jack shook his head. "Or maybe they've always known, and something else has happened that made them act now." Susan turned to a woman sitting quietly at the end of the table. "How ready are we for war, Lisa?" Lisa Baker, the fleet commander, gave a short, unhappy laugh. "We're not. After 3,000 years of peace, our warships have been turned into trade vessels or exploration ships. We have some defensive systems around Earth and the main colonies, but nothing that could stand against the full Council fleet." "The Council gave us 1 month," Susan said. "What can we do in that time?" Richard stood up and walked to the main screen. He pulled up images of old ship designs. "We still have the old defense platforms in storage, and a lot of our trade ships can be refitted with weapons. It won't be pretty, but we can put together some kind of defense." "They expect us to be easy targets," Susan said. "We need to show them otherwise." Jack looked up from his tablet. "I need to go to LV 447. If we can find out what was really there, maybe we can understand why the Council is doing this." Susan thought for a moment, then nodded. "Take a small, fast ship. Linda Ross from the ambassador's office will go with you. She knows the Council better than most of us." She turned to face the entire room. "The rest of us have work to do. Richard, start waking up those defense platforms. Lisa, I want every ship we have called back to Earth space. If the Council wants a war after 3,000 years of peace, we'll show them that humans haven't forgotten how to fight." As the meeting broke up, Susan stayed behind, looking at the star map. The Council world surrounded human space like a net. The odds were impossible, but humans had faced impossible odds before. 1 month to prepare for war. It would have to be enough. The colony of New Eden was beautiful at sunrise. Mary Peterson stood on the balcony of the government building and watched the twin suns come up over the fields. Red and orange lights spilled across the crops that fed the 15,000 people who called this planet home. Her quiet moment ended when the alarm sounded. At first, Mary thought it was a drill. They had been running defense drills every day since the news from Earth arrived 2 weeks ago. But the voice that came over the speakers was tense with real fear. "Attention all citizens. This is not a drill. Council ships have entered our system. All people must move to the shelter areas now. Mary ran inside to the control room. The screen showed 5 large ships coming toward New Eden. They were still days away from the 1-month deadline the council had set. "They're early," said Ben Wright, the colony's security chief. "Why would they break their own timeline?" Mary didn't waste time wondering. "Sound the evacuation order, get everyone to the underground shelters, and call every farm worker who knows how to drive the big harvesters. I have an idea." The council ships landed 3 hours later in the large field east of the main colony. Mary watched from a hidden position as alien soldiers marched out. They wore battle armor and carried weapons that glowed with strange energy. They clearly expected no resistance from a farming colony. "Now," Mary said into her communicator. From 3 directions, massive farm harvesters roared toward the alien ships. The machines were huge, normally used to collect crops, but now repurposed as weapons. The aliens turned in surprise, firing at the approaching machines. Some harvesters exploded, but others kept coming. Behind the harvesters, colonists drove smaller vehicles loaded with farming chemicals. They sprayed the chemicals into the air around the alien troops. The chemicals weren't deadly to the aliens, but they created thick, blinding clouds. In the confusion, other colonists used their knowledge of the land to slip close to the alien ships. They carried simple tools, cutting torches used for repairing farm equipment, electrical disruptors used for pest control. They couldn't destroy the alien ships, but they could damage them. "Keep them busy," Mary said into her communicator. "The evacuation ships need more time." Behind the colony, 3 large transport ships were loading as many people as possible. They weren't military vessels, just regular transport ships that happened to be at New Eden when the news of war came. They were the colony's only hope of escape. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted for hours. The farmers and scientists of New Eden used every tool and trick they could think of. They changed the colony's weather control systems to create a violent storm over the landing area. They released farm animals to run through the alien formations. They fought with courage born of desperation. Mary knew they couldn't win, but they didn't need to win. They just needed time. The aliens pushed closer to the colony center. Mary was about to order a retreat when new ships appeared in the sky. For a moment, she feared more council forces had arrived. Then she recognized the shapes, Earth ships. Admiral Miller's hastily assembled fleet had come. "This is Captain Steve Daniels of the U.S. Defiance," a voice said over the colony's communication system. "Hang on, New Eden. The cavalry has arrived." The Earth ships engaged the council vessels, drawing their fire away from the colony. Smaller ships landed to help with the evacuation. Mary watched as her people boarded the rescue ships. The battle in space continued, but Miller's fleet managed to hold back the council forces long enough. As Mary boarded the last transport, she looked back at New Eden, her home for the past 10 years. "We'll come back," Ben Wright said beside her. "Someday." Mary nodded, but she wasn't sure she believed it. The war had just begun, and they had only seen a small taste of what the council could do. But they had also shown what humans could do when pushed: adapt, improvise, and refuse to give up without a fight. Captain Steve Daniels stood on the bridge of the U.S. Defiance and watched the stars. His ship had once been a cargo vessel, moving goods between Earth's colonies. Now it was a warship, with hastily added weapons and shields. The crew were not soldiers but traders and engineers who had learned to fight in just 3 weeks. "Council ships detected," said Amy Green, his sensor officer. "3 large vessels coming toward us." Steve nodded. After the battle at New Eden, the Council had stepped up their attacks. Earth's forces were spread thin, trying to protect 17 colonies across 12 star systems. "They're following the usual attack pattern," Amy said, "coming in fast and direct." Steve smiled. The Council races had fought wars before humans even left Earth. They had perfected battle formations and attack strategies over thousands of years. But their experience was also their weakness. They didn't change. They didn't adapt. "Take us into the asteroid field," Steve ordered. The Defiance moved between the large rocks floating in space. The ship wasn't designed for this kind of flying, but Steve trusted his pilot. "They're following us," Amy reported, "just as you predicted." The Council ships were larger and more powerful than the Defiance, but they were also less nimble. As they entered the asteroid field, they had to slow down. "Now," Steve said, "spring the trap." From behind the larger asteroids, 5 small Earth ships appeared. They had been hiding there for days, waiting. They fired at the Council ships from multiple directions. The Council vessels tried to return fire, but they were boxed in by the asteroids and confused by the attack from multiple sides. "It's working," Amy said, surprise in her voice. Steve nodded. "Humans are good at being unpredictable." The battle lasted only 20 minutes. One Council ship was severely damaged. The other 2 retreated. It was a small victory, but an important one. It showed that humans could fight back. Meanwhile, on Earth, Nicole Wright sat surrounded by computer screens. She had been a programmer before the war. Now she was searching for ways to fight an enemy with technology far advanced beyond Earth's. "Look at this," she said to Richard Allen, who stood nearby. All Council ships used the same basic computer systems, different models, but built on the same foundation. Richard leaned closer to see the screen. "A common foundation means common weaknesses." Nicole nodded excitedly. "Exactly. I've been studying the data from the ships we've engaged. They all use a specific type of sensor array. If we can disrupt it, we might be able to create a blind spot in their targeting systems." On the other side of the room, a communication screen lit up. Jack Nelson's face appeared. He and Linda Ross had reached Moon LV 447 2 days ago. "We found something," Jack said. His voice was filled with excitement despite the poor connection. "The ruins here aren't just ruins. They're a facility of some kind, and it's still partially active." "What kind of facility?" Richard asked. "We're not sure yet," Linda replied, moving into view beside Jack. "But we found records. This place belonged to a species the Council records call the Precursors. They were here long before the Council formed." Jack held up a small device. "This is the important part. The weapons we found here weren't designed to destroy. They were meant to protect. I think the Council isn't afraid of what we found. They're afraid of what we might become if we learn to use it." Nicole looked thoughtful. "If these precursors were so advanced, why aren't they still around?" Jack shook his head. "We don't know yet, but their technology seems compatible with human brain patterns in a way it isn't with most Council species. It's almost like they were waiting for us," Linda finished. Richard turned to Nicole. "Work faster on that blind spot technology. If Jack and Linda are right, we need to buy more time." As the call ended, Steve Daniels and the Defiance were already planning their next unorthodox attack. Across human space, people who had known peace for 3,000 years were learning to fight in ways the Council had never imagined. Admiral Susan Miller looked at the large screen in Earth's Defense Center. It showed hundreds of Council ships moving toward Earth. This was not a small attack force. This was an invasion fleet meant to end the war in one decisive blow. "How much time do we have?" she asked. 3 days at their current speed," Lisa Baker replied. She had dark circles under her eyes. None of them had slept much in the past month. Susan turned to Nicole Wright. "Is your blind spot technology ready?" Nicole nodded, but her face showed worry. "It works in simulations. The program exploits a flaw in their sensor systems. When activated, it should make our ships nearly invisible to their targeting computers. But we haven't tested it in real combat." "We don't have time for tests," Susan said. "Get it installed on every ship we have." Richard Allen entered the room, carrying a small device. "I've adapted some of the principles from the precursor technology Jack discovered. We can add it to Earth's defensive grid." "Will it stop their ships?" Susan asked. Richard shook his head. "Not stop them, but it might confuse their navigation systems, make it harder for them to coordinate their attack. It wasn't much, but it was all they had. Susan looked at the assembled team. This will be the largest battle humanity has fought in 3,000 years. We are outnumbered and outgunned, but we have something the Council doesn't expect: innovation. On the Council flagship, Supreme Counselor Zexthar watched Earth grow larger on the view screen. The blue planet looked peaceful from space, showing no sign of the species that had caused so much concern. "Status report," he commanded. "Our fleet is in perfect formation," replied his second-in-command. "Earth has only 87 ships defending their planet. Our forces outnumber theirs 6-1. Zexthar's neck flaps darkened with satisfaction. "The humans have been peaceful for too long. They have forgotten how to fight." The battle began 2 days later. The Council fleet advanced in perfect formation, exactly as they had done in countless battles against other species. Their weapons were charged. Their shields were at full power. Victory seemed certain. Then Nichols' blind spot technology activated. Suddenly, the Council's targeting systems could no longer lock onto human ships. The smaller, more nimble Earth vessels darted between the larger Council ships, firing at weak points and then disappearing before the Council gunners could adjust their aim manually. "What is happening?" Zexthar demanded as reports of damage came in from across his fleet. At the same time, Richard's adapted precursor technology began affecting the Council's navigation systems. Ships that were supposed to maintain tight formations began drifting apart. Some fired on empty space. Others accidentally hit their own allies. On the U.S. Defiance, now part of Earth's main defense fleet, Steve Daniels watched the confusion spread through the Council forces. "It's working better than we hoped," he said to Amy Green. "But they still outnumber us. Keep moving. Don't let them fix their sensors." The battle raged for hours. Council ships, despite their confusion, managed to break through to Earth's orbit. They fired on the planet's surface, but the hastily upgraded defense grid absorbed most of the attacks. In the defense center, Susan Miller received reports from across the battlefield. Human ships were being destroyed, but they were taking Council vessels with them. And for the first time, the Council forces seemed to be hesitating. They didn't expect this kind of resistance, Lisa Baker said, a hint of pride in her voice. Susan nodded. "Humans adapt. It's what we do best." On his flagship, Zexthar watched with growing horror as his perfect battle plan fell apart. The humans had achieved in weeks what other species couldn't in thousands of years. They had found weaknesses no one else had discovered. They had changed their tactics completely from their historical records. "Order the fleet to regroup," he finally commanded. "We need a new approach." As the Council ships pulled back to reorganize, a small cheer went through Earth's defense center. It wasn't a victory yet, but it was a beginning. Humanity had stood against the full might of the Galactic Council and survived the first round. Jack Nelson and Linda Ross returned to Earth as heroes. Their ship landed at the main spaceport, where Admiral Miller waited to meet them. Despite the ongoing battles in space, this moment felt important enough for her to be there in person. "We brought everything we could," Jack said as he stepped off the ship. He looked tired but excited. "Data files, artifacts, and most importantly, answers." In the defense center, Jack set up a display showing images from Moon LV-447. The room was quiet as he began to explain. The precursors were an ancient species, far more advanced than even the Council races. They explored the galaxy over 20,000 years ago. Linda picked up the story. "According to the records we found, the precursors weren't warriors. They were peacekeepers. They used their technology to prevent wars, not start them." Jack nodded. "The most important thing we discovered is this." He showed an image of a strange symbol carved into stone. The precursors had a plan. They studied all the intelligent species in the galaxy, and they chose humans as their potential successors. "Why us?" Susan asked. "Because of our unique mix of traits," Linda explained. our ability to feel deep compassion, but also to adapt and innovate. The precursors saw that humans could one day become the new peacekeepers of the galaxy. Richard Allen studied the technical data they had brought back. The technology we found isn't weapons in the traditional sense. It's defensive systems, communication devices, shields, tools to maintain peace, not wage war. Jack looked around the room. The Council has been maintaining peace for 3,000 years, but not out of kindness. They ruled through fear and control. When humans joined the galactic community, the Council kept us limited. They shared some technology but held back the most important advances. And when we found the precursor site, Linda added, they panicked. They feared what would happen if humans realized their potential, if we took up the role the precursors intended for us. As they spoke, Ambassador John Carter had an idea. Since returning from the council chambers a month ago, he had been helping with diplomatic efforts, trying to contact any council species that might support humans. He had found few allies. I need to speak with Zexthar, he said suddenly. Susan looked surprised. The Supreme Counselor. He's the one who declared war on us. John nodded. Exactly. And now he's seen what humans can do. He knows this war will not be the easy victory he expected. This might be our chance to open a direct channel. Nickelwright, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. I can help with that. The precursor technology includes advanced communication systems. We might be able to bypass the Council's blocks and send a message directly to Zexthar's flagship. For hours, they worked to set up the connection. When they finally succeeded, Zexthar's face appeared on the screen. His 4 eyes widened in surprise. Ambassador Carter, how did you access this channel? John stood tall, facing the alien who had ordered the attack on his world. We have learned many things in the past month, Supreme Counselor, including the truth about the precursors and why the Council really declared war on us. Zexthar's neck flaps darkened. You know nothing. We know everything, John replied calmly. We know the Council has maintained peace through control, not cooperation. We know you fear what humanity might become, and we know the precursors chose us for a reason. John pulled up images from Moon LV 447. This war can end now, Zexthar. Your forces have seen that humans will not be easily defeated. How many more lives will be lost before you accept that we have a right to exist in this galaxy? For a long moment, Zexthar was silent. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter than before. What are your terms, Ambassador? It wasn't surrender, but it was a beginning. A chance for peace. John Carter took a deep breath and prepared to negotiate not just for Earth's survival, but for a new future for the entire galaxy. 1 month after the Great Battle at Earth, representatives from all 27 Council species gathered on a neutral space station. The large meeting room had windows looking out to the stars. On one side sat the Council delegates. On the other side, a small group of humans led by John Carter. The room was tense and quiet. These two sides had been at war only weeks ago. Now they were trying to find peace. Supreme Counselor Zexthar entered last. He looked older than when John had last seen him. The strain of the failed war showed on his face. This emergency session of the Galactic Council is now open, Zexthar announced, using the same words he had used to start the war. We are here to discuss terms with the humans of Earth. John stood up. Unlike last time, no guards moved to stop him from speaking. The war between humanity and the Council has cost both sides greatly, John said. Ships destroyed, lives lost, trust broken. We could continue fighting, but that would only bring more loss. He activated a display showing the precursor symbol they had found on Moon LV 447. We now understand why this war began. The Council feared what humans might become if we accessed the precursor legacy. You feared we would challenge your authority. Some of the Council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. John continued. But the precursors didn't choose humans to be conquerors. They chose us to be peacekeepers, to bring balance to the galaxy, not through control, as the Council has done, but through cooperation and understanding. John looked at each council member in turn. We don't want revenge. We don't want to rule. We want a new beginning, a true peace, not based on fear. Shanla, the Micteri representative who had tried to help John at the start of the war, spoke up. What exactly are you proposing, Ambassador? A restructuring of the Galactic Council, John replied. One where all species have an equal voice, where decisions are made together, not by the powerful few. The room filled with voices as council members debated among themselves. Some seemed angry, others thoughtful. To John's surprise, many of the smaller, less powerful species seemed interested in his proposal. Sexfar called for order. And if we refuse these terms? Admiral Susan Miller, sitting beside John, spoke for the first time. Then the war continues. You've seen what humans can do in just 1 month of conflict. We adapt. We learn. We grow stronger. And if we accept, asked another council member. Then we share the precursor knowledge with all species, John said. We work together to understand it, not just humans alone. We build a better galaxy for everyone. The debate lasted for hours. Old powers argued to maintain their control. Smaller species pushed for the changes humans offered. In the end, faced with the prospect of a long and costly war against an enemy that grew more capable each day, even the strongest opponents began to waver. When the final vote came, it was 17-10 in favor of accepting the human terms. Back on Earth, the defense fleet stood down. Richard Allen began the process of converting the weapons systems back to peaceful uses. In a quiet moment, Susan Miller looked out at the stars from her office window. Do you think it will last? Lisa Baker asked, joining her. This new peace. Susan nodded slowly. It won't be easy. Change never is. But I think we've found our true place in the galaxy at last. On Moon LV 447, Jack Nelson and Linda Ross returned with a team of scientists, both human and alien. Together, they continued to explore the precursor site, learning more about the ancient peacekeepers and their vision for the future. And in the newly reformed council chambers, John Carter took his seat, not just as Earth's representative, but as a symbol of a new beginning. After 3,000 years of one kind of peace, the galaxy was ready to try another. One built not on fear and control, but on the very qualities the precursors had seen in humanity: compassion, innovation, and the courage to face an uncertain future together.